New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment. Inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello, and a very warm welcome back to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to not only host this show, but to have the conversations I have with my guests. And today you're going to meet another guest that's coming back for a second time. I'm so thrilled. Cynthia James, you'll meet her in a minute. So here on Growing Edge Live, our intention is to inspire minds, heal hearts, transform lives, and evolve consciousness. And we do this at the very green growing edge by having conversations with soul-centered individuals that are channeling their time, their talent, their energy, their resources into doing good work in the world. And many of my guests are supporting others in waking up and living more consciously aligned with their visions and their dreams. So today my guest is my beloved friend, Cynthia James. And as I said, she's back for a second time, and I'm so happy because she's got some really great things coming up that I can't wait to share with you, some opportunities for you to journey with her, to do sacred pilgrimage, and to have a community of women. So we'll hear more about that. I want to read a little bit about Cynthia. She is an emotional integration leadership coach. She guides people as they make changes for lasting healing in their lives. She's a speaker. You can find her giving a TEDx talk. She's a performing artist and a multiple award-winning author of 3 books. Is it 3 or is it more?
5.
5! Oh my gosh. I didn't do my research very well. Cynthia has coached and supported thousands of people worldwide into vibrant living. Her program, Advanced Awareness and Clarity Coaching, offers depth, focus, and results for high-level business leaders. And internationally, Cynthia creates and facilitates inward journey pilgrimage retreats. She's completed studies from Holmes Institute and spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. She's created and hosts a weekly podcast called Awakening Women. And Cynthia is personally committed to utilizing creative expression as a vital and effective healing modality that will assist everyone in their own personal and professional growth. That's Cynthia. Welcome back, Cynthia.
Happy to be with you, Allie.
Yeah, it's really great to see you. And just before the show, we were chatting a little bit, and you were talking about you've got a new pilgrimage, sacred adventure journey coming up, which we'll get to hear about. And I was mentioning that I really feel like I know you at a very deep level because I just listened to your book, Does My Voice Matter, on Audible. And so for those of you that haven't listened to a book on Audible, it's really so delightful because having a story or something read to you is very soothing. It lands differently than actually reading yourself. Not that I'm against reading books, but having, you read your life story was really, really powerful, hearing it from your heart and through your voice. We talk a little bit about that because it was, I walk every day for a few miles. And so I wear my AirPods and I walk and listen. And to hear you share your story over, it was probably about 5 days that I spent listening. What struck me, well, many things, but the way that you start each chapter with what's going on in that particular decade, that was really, I enjoyed that. That wasn't the main content, obviously, your story was, but to put it into the framework of what was going on in the world at that particular time, I found that really helpful to sort of see what was happening in the world, how that was affecting maybe you and your choices as you grew and through the decades. So yeah, it was really great.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was a conscious choice, because what I realized as I was writing the book is that, the culture that we live in, whatever is happening in the culture, is impacting us. It's impacting the way we think and feel and react. And each decade, because the whole book is following decades of my life, every decade there was a lot going on, and it was impacting my choices, how I wanted to see myself, how I wanted to show up, how I wanted to learn and grow, because my childhood had been sort of, violent and small.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it really broadens things. And you do a lot of travel. You start on the East Coast and then you end up on the West Coast. And now you're kind of a little bit east of the West Coast.
Right. I'm in Colorado now. Yes, I am definitely an adventurer and a traveler.
Yeah, I really got that. Listening, I mean, you went down so many different roads with your career in singing, in acting, and then diving into your spiritual life really wholeheartedly, and taking the spiritual psychology in Santa Monica, I think, along with your work at that time with the Agape International Spiritual Center. So maybe we could dive into to that a little bit more. What came first, the Agape or the spiritual psychology? And can you share a little bit about what spiritual psychology is? Because that might be, well, it was new to me, and I'd like to hear a bit more about it.
Sure. So Agape came first. I was part of the group that were, Michael Beckwith and Nirvana Gale were having silent sadhanas on weekends and doing workshops in their living rooms. And so I was there as Agape was being birthed. And so, I took all the classes. And but I wanted to, when I became a practitioner, I was like, which is like spiritual counseling, I thought, there's something missing for me, because some people, they come in and healing takes place at the spiritual level, but people have mental and emotional issues that praying doesn't just help them get over. So I wanted to learn about that. So I heard about the University of Santa Monica, and what they did was, when you went through that, it was a master's program in for 2 years. And they taught you 65 counseling strategies, along with things to keep you grounded in your spiritual evolution and growth. So that's where my work, emotional integration, came from, because in our second year, they said, okay, you've learned all these strategies. Now we want you to create your own counseling strategy. And I'm like, oh no. And then they were like, and then you get to present it. I was like, oh Lord, But because I had been through so much trauma and violence and abuse as a kid, and had done so much work in therapy and stuff, I thought, I want to help people understand that the healing isn't just changing the mind. There's a mind-body connection. And so that became the work. How do I connect people to those places within, because the body's a computer, it remembers everything that's ever happened to us. How do I help them take those events back to a place where they can disconnect those cords and beliefs that got implanted, and put new things in there to make it more vital and more open and more aware.
Beautiful. Yeah, but I've worked with a transpersonal psychologist. Is that a similar thing to spiritual psychology? Or is that a technique?
It's similar. I mean, there are, the counseling strategies are from every aspect of therapeutic work. But what I was interested in is, how do I connect that to the spiritual evolution? And so for me, it was helping people get into the body and understand the language of the body, and to be able to invite them to understand, once they understand the language, to get that the experiences that they're having are messages, and how do they translate those messages so that they can make better choices.
Beautiful, beautiful. So you've blended the work that you started at Agape with being a practitioner there with all that you learned in spiritual psychology, and that somehow morphed and synergized into being what you present now in the world.
Yes.
So how do you said you're in your office, so you have an office in Colorado where you live, and do you see clients? Do you work one-on-one or groups? How does that look?
Yeah. Today, I do almost all of my work is online, except if I'm working with teams or leaders and they have me come in to work with the team, but almost all online. And when I got to Colorado, because I was an associate minister at Mile High Church for about 11 years. And then I got this inner direction to move, which made no sense to me because I didn't even know what I was going to do. But what that became was, I work with one-on-one. I work sometimes with couples who want to have a deeper, more committed relationship. I work a lot with leaders and teams on conscious leadership, and really blending the drive for the bottom line with conscious awareness about the fact that the team, when it's conscious and enlivened and vital, the bottom line grows.
Mm. So you are known as a champion for change. And I'm wondering, what are the core components as you work with not only individuals, but organizations? What are some of the core components of change that actually lasts, like lasting change for people? What are there some kind of pillars that would be helpful for people to understand, if they're because most of our audience here is new thought.
Yeah.
So those people that are exploring, what it means to take responsibility for their lives and, move forward with these principles. So what are those core components to having lasting change?
Well, there's three. And the first one is inquiry. When I get with the client, it's like, okay, what's your current reality? I mean, we want to set an intention, where do you want to end up, when we've done this work? But where are you now? What's working for you? What's not working for you? What do you feel are your weaknesses? What do you feel are recurring challenges that keep coming up, so that you feel you keep hitting a roadblock and feel stuck? So that's part of it. And then the next thing is we do introspection. So then sometimes that's meditation, sometimes that's journaling, sometimes that's guided imagery that I do with people. It's because here's the thing. If it's coming up, if it's a repeating pattern, then what that means is there's something that's unresolved. And there's some belief that's running that is keeping you in that space of that belief system. So you can't change the mind if you don't even know what's there. So we do inner work. And while we're doing inner work, I begin to seed tools that they can use, because I feel like my job is to get my clients not to need me, to have their own tool chest that they can work. And so I seed those tools. And then the last part is integration. So now we start working those tools where I'm mentoring them, so that by the time we complete our work, then we get to they get to go out and they get to practice this integration. And of course, they can always come back and work with me, but they feel stronger and more confident, because they're clear now that those old patterns do not define them.
Beautiful. I can see how that would be really supportive of someone in a leadership role or wanting change in their life or within their relationships, to have that container of that you create to support them, to share these core principles of, the fundamentals of change, would be super helpful. You've coached many people over your work with, in this lane, this spiritual lane. How many people would you say you've worked with over the course of your practice?
Ooh, I don't know, hundreds.
Yeah, I love to kind of, I'm sort of a big picture person. So, when I see Cynthia doing her work in the world, creating books, courses, coaching, I see all of the connections, that you've made, connected to other people's lives, how that has supported them. And as we know, being all connected, interrelated, interdependent, that when we touch another, then it just ripples out and ripples out. So I'm imagining the huge ripple of change and love that you've created from working with the people that you have.
Yeah. And, so when I answered the question, I was answering it from the point of the coaching work I've done. But when you talk about the ripple, I mean, the thousands of people I've spoken to in communities, the people that follow me online, and so it's thousands of people that I impact in various and sundry ways. But I would say that, hundreds of the people that I've worked with, individually or collectively as an organization.
Yeah. So we also you mentioned earlier that you work with women, you do a podcast, and that I'd love to know about your journey with podcasting. I'm fairly new to it. I've been doing it for a year and a few months, and really enjoy speaking and to, people from all over the place. And I love to go deep, and I love to know who they are and what they're all about. And so hearing about you, your podcast, working with women, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was actually birthed during the pandemic. I had known for a while that the majority of people that follow me are women. My social media team did analytics and said, are you aware that 80% of the people that follow you are women? I was like, no. But I also started witnessing that so many of my clients, also who are a lot of them feminine, were talking about the fact that life was changing. They were in transition. That something was calling them to go deeper into a more empowered space. And I thought, well, what would happen if I started interviewing? Now, I didn't know anything about doing a podcast. There was someone in my life who had a platform for podcasts, and I said, how do I do this? And he said, turn on Zoom and record it and send it to me. I'm like, hey, I can do that. But what started happening is, at first it was just women I knew. And I started to realize that there was a theme, and that the theme was that all of these women wanted to make a difference. They were change makers, and a lot of them were way showers. charting new paths that people hadn't done before. And after I had done it for about a year, then I started getting emails saying, because I interview on podcasts like this one, I started getting saying, I know this woman, I think she'd be great for your podcast. So all of a sudden, these people started coming from all walks of life, all cultures, all races. I interviewed a woman from Afghanistan, from Africa, a woman from Switzerland who was going to marry the love of her life. And 3 months before the wedding, she gets an email and he breaks off the engagement and will not talk to her. And she's devastated. And so after she gets off the floor after a few weeks, she remembers she had read this thing in Japan about marrying yourself. So she sent out an email to everybody and said, the wedding is on, I'm marrying me. And everybody came to Greece and she had her dress and her flowers. And she said, she started blogging about it. And so what happened was that it inspired people that she had taken control of her life and not allowed another person's actions. And so it became a whole career for her. So I feel like what I'm doing is bringing women's voices. I think it's the time for women emerging on the planet on every level. And I feel like Women Awakening brings these women, these 30-minute interviews for people to go, oh, they're not the exception, they're the example. And what tools can I take from them to take my life to the next level?
Yeah, beautiful. So we're seeing some big changes in the world, with women, especially Kamala Harris coming onto the stage to really, I know I've got 3 granddaughters and I've got 4 sisters and a brother, one brother, and 2 sons. So I'm not just pointing out the women here. And so for me to see a woman being so celebrated and cheered, and I know that's not the whole story, but in my little corner of the world, I'm seeing a lot of people super excited to see a woman stand up and bring such grace and hope and love and compassion into this interesting stage of politics. And not that this is a political show by any stretch of the imagination. I want to focus more on the seeing a woman rise to a place of such extreme power and leadership, and what that's going to do for us, for all, not just the women, but for all of us. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to start from the spiritual point of view.
Actually, I just have to, I see my daughter's watching and she said, and a daughter. I forgot.
Hello, Alex. Here's the thing. 8 weeks ago, Joe Biden was running for president, and there was a debate, and it created this explosion. And in a very short period of time, he decided to not only step down, but to endorse her to run. Now, when you think about it, the way the political process works, you got to go through primaries and you got to go all over the place and get, and all of a sudden he does this, and all of a sudden the entire party comes up and says yes, and endorses it. And so I'm sitting there watching that and I'm going, okay, this is some grace moment, because I don't know that it would have happened any other way without an extraordinary amount of challenge. So she steps in, and then what do we see? When you're vice president, your job is to support the president. So your job isn't to be visible and to shine and do all that, right? So she did a very good job of that. And people were like, well, she didn't do anything. She was doing a lot of stuff. But all of a sudden, she comes to the forefront. And what do you see? You see joy. What do you see? You see heart. What do you see? You see someone that is invested in humanity. What do you see is someone who's invested in justice. I mean, it was striking it's been to watch it and to know that when she was a public defender, when she was a attorney general, Senate, whatever, vice president, everything was Kamala Harris for the people. And so what I think is that some of the great leaders, female leaders that you've seen throughout time, they have been for the people. They have been to empower people, to lift people, to nurture people, to bring their gifts to the planet. So I'm not naive. I know she's up against a big machine, and there's a big machine behind her. But what we're watching is the divine feminine in action. Thousands and thousands of people showing up on Zoom calls to uplift the vision that she's bringing. So I think it's like, for me, to see a woman of color in that position I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. And my mother, when Obama was elected, my mother was in a nursing home and would not go to sleep on the night of election until she found out what happened. And she called me and said, oh my God, he won. And she's sobbing. She said, I never thought I'd see that. So I just feel like we're on this planet because we have, I believe we asked to come here at this time. And we are witnessing evolution in an extraordinarily accelerated way.
Yeah. It's so inspiring. It's so exciting. And I do believe, when you said it's grace, I think of defining grace as God infusing itself into our lives in spite of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a moment of grace. I also feel like it's some kind of divine intervention. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but my spiritual brain, mm-hmm. my spiritual heart has me feeling that way and feeling very motivated to, it sort of gives me a boost to want to be with women and support women in finding their voice, as your book so beautifully shares. So I'd love to just have a conversation about this, but I want to talk about other things too. So you mentioned that you were a minister for 11 years at the Mile High Church. Mm-hmm. And what do you see is the next step in the world of organized religion? And I'm not talking about all religions necessarily, but within the New Thought movement. I know I'm not actively a part of any bigger organization at this moment, but I'm seeing some things online and some comments that some friends of mine are making. There's some changes going on. I know for me, we used to have a brick and mortar spiritual center here at the top of Utah, and 5-6 years ago, I was really feeling like I don't know that this pulpit ministry is for me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, do you have your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the New Thought world as far as organized churches and gatherings? What do you think the future is for ministry, not ministry, but organized, communities, spiritual communities within New Thought?
Well, here's the thing. I think we're in a huge transitional moment. We've got baby boomers who were brought up in a certain kind of, this is what traditional religion looks like. We've got Gen Z, Gen X people coming behind us who are like, well, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to sit there and listen to somebody talk to me. And so what I think is that we see a lot of the baby boomers who are the spiritual leaders. And I think the call is to open your consciousness. Ernest Holmes said, be open at the top, right? To open your consciousness, to understand that you must be in the zone, the wave of the change and the generational desires in order to feed people's souls. And so for me, in this moment, it feels like hybrid. It feels like some people want to come in and to have, brick and mortar kind of places and have a Sunday service. Other people want to be online. Other people, especially some of the younger people, they want bites. They want, give me little 5-minute things, give me a little 10, and then have a gathering. I'll come and have something where we can drum and we can do whatever. But it's like, this is a moment of reinvention. And so I feel like I have a lot of people in my life who are spiritual leaders, who are baby boomers, and they're like, oh, hello, Wayne. I like that. Luminaries of light. It's like a lot of baby boomers go, I'm not into the technological, and I'm not, and it's like, then find somebody in your community who is. Find somebody. My social media team are young. So they know what people want and how to get to them and how to communicate, and the difference between what you put on Facebook and what you put on LinkedIn, or what you put on Instagram or what you put on TikTok, and so when I go to speak somewhere, I always ask the spiritual director, okay, what's the makeup of your audience? And I sing, so I always sing my music with it, because I think music is a second way of praying. And it's like, I think it's the universe is saying to us what was created, and some of it was created for control in religion. It wasn't created so that people could fly, and it was like, listen to me. So how do we open the space to support people like the Sufis to have their own divine connection? And to come into community as a way of service and love and light. And I have an online community in Kajabi that's just my people, because my people were like, I don't feel safe on Facebook. so we can have conversations, or I can create challenges for them, or I can create classes for them where we get to do stuff as community. But it's not that they get in their car and they drive somewhere. But I do think that in-person connection, which is why I do pilgrimages, is an important part of community.
Okay, we're going to jump off. I'm looking at the clock. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Okay, thanks.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center, Ottawa, Holmes Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living, Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
find. Open my heart with the whispers of truth to live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Ali.
We're back. I'm just noticing that we've got some people live with us, dropping some comments. And I just want to mention that we record this live on Mondays. And then the following Monday, it drops as a podcast. And so thanks for being here, everyone. This is such a fun community that we're creating. Speaking of communities, you were just talking about how things are changing. And when you go speak somewhere, you sort of check in with, who's our audience here and so on. And you mentioned that you have a community on Kajabi that you work with, and you create content or speak to the needs and desires of your community in that way. And that's the way would you call it a ministry, or is that kind of an old school word for, what you're doing now, as far as coaching and leading people in that way?
I think it is my ministry. I'm an ordained minister, but I call myself kind of like a spiritual guide, and the community. I mean, there's thousands of people, and it's like, what do you want? Like I'll because I also have, that's my private community, but I also have Facebook, and I also have Instagram, and I also have TikTok. And on Facebook, every Monday morning, I do a community prayer circle where people are invited 8:30 Mountain to come and spend 15 minutes with me, where I talk about a topic, I play music, or I play a meditation, and I do a blessing. And so those people aren't necessarily in the private community, but they're from all over the world, and they just come in for the prayers. And so, we'll have hundreds of views in a week, right? And so I feel like the people who are in my private community are the people who want to be with me and who want to be with like-minded people, so we can have conversations and do those kinds of things. But then there's people that they just don't want to be affiliated. They're like, no. And so I give them, like last year, I did a thing called Tranquility Meditations, and I gifted them to my community, but then I let the other people know in other parts of Follow Me that they could buy this digital tranquility meditations. And then I just gave on my website, I just put out meditations for people to navigate the elections, because people are trying to figure it all out. And the people in my community are the ones that get my newsletters and different things that I offer to them.
Yeah, I can really see how with the, bringing social media, the internet alive, that there's so many ways that people can connect and move into groups or communities specific to their own desires and wants and needs. And maybe brick and mortar churches, this has taken a huge chunk out of the people that would potentially be, going to in person. And I think it's a wonderful thing. I miss being in community myself, but I find community in other ways, not going to church very often, but to know that it's right here in your own home, that you can just turn on your iPad or your computer or your phone and connect and be spiritually fed and feel like you're part of a community, part of a movement, part of your own. It sort of gives you more power to create your own spiritual path forward with all of the different choices that we have. So you talked about your sacred pilgrimages, and this is something that you offer not only your group, but other people. Are everyone invited to join you? And can you tell us about this way of deepening, awakening by traveling to distant places
Mm.
and what you have coming up?
Yeah. So I feel like one of the things is you can't be in a polarized place if you begin to understand that people around the world want the same things. And when you go to visit and visit their cultures and their sacred spaces, then it sort of helps dissolve all those perceptions that have no meaning. Somebody told you this or somebody made it up. So I've been taking people on pilgrimages for like 10 years. And what's important to me is that people start to understand that this is not a tour. If you want a tour, don't come with me, because this is going to be a spiritual journey. Every morning we start with a spiritual practice. We go to sacred sites. Sometimes I partner, like in Peru, I partnered with a shaman. In Egypt, I partner with an Egyptologist and an Egyptian, an esoteric leader. You know, in Chartres, France, which I'm doing this year, I partner in Chartres with a woman who's the world-renowned labyrinth expert. So and then when I go to Dominiher, Italy, you know, I work with their teachers and their healers there, and even have a past life class for people that's quite extraordinary. But for me, it's like, I remember when I was singing, I had a tour in Europe, and I remember going to Asia and walking into temples and places and feeling this energy that was like, oh, that's the same kind of feeling I have when I'm at home and I'm connected to God. And I'm like, oh. So then I got curious about, well, what do these people believe? What do they think? And that I discovered there's a golden thread through all of these religions and all of these practices. So I take people who want to get away for 7 to 15 days, who really want to be in a community. Before we go, I meet with my groups 3 times online, and we do spiritual practice together along with logistics, so that we're already a community of heart before we even land in the place. So this year, I'm taking a group to the south of France. There's a Mary Magdalene trail, and there's a lot of history about Mary Magdalene and the Cathars in that whole area. And then we end up in Chartres, and we have a private walk on the labyrinth with Renaissance music. And then I meet another group, and we go to Egypt, and we spend 12 days there, and we're in and out of temples and museums and pyramids, but we have 5.5 days on the Nile on a boat that's just us, where people are taking care of us, and we have a sunrise private Isis temple experience, and 2 hours private in the big pyramid, and meditation with Sekhmet and different stuff like that. And then next year, I'm taking 2 groups to Dominiher. Dominiher, Italy is between Turin and Milan. And it's a spiritual community that's like almost 50 years old. And they host the temples of humankind, which are temples built inside of a mountain. And the frequency is, because it's laying on all these ley lines that intersect, the energy is like extraordinary. And then on top, there are spirals that are like many labyrinths that are attuned to different things. So people walk them for different levels of healing. So I feel like, because I've been loving to travel since I was like 17 years old, I feel like this is a way in which God works through me to open portals for people to have their own experiences, but also to learn about other cultures and history and find out what works for me.
Gosh, every time you share something, you bring so much alive. I could go down so many different roads with what you just said. So you're going to Chartres, France, to do the labyrinth experience, and then you're going to Egypt with a smaller group. Were those people also doing the Chartres labyrinth?
So the France group is different. We start in Marseille, and we do Saint Baume, which is a beautiful grotto cave with a lot of Mary Magdalene mythology, and we go through the south of France, and then we go to Chartres. And so that's one group of people, and then the other group of people will meet me in Egypt at the beginning of October.
And this is your third mystical pilgrimage to Egypt?
It is.
And do you do the same thing? Or are you doing different things each time you go back? I mean, how does that work? Because I'm sure, I would imagine that, you become very familiar with the things that you experienced on trip one, and then want to bring people to experience that. But then there's, I'm sure, so many more things to include. So how's the evolution of your, now you're about to go for your third time? Is it the same as the first one, or is it, how's it different?
Well, the itinerary is the same, but the experience is always different, because isn't that how God is? I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? And so sometimes we'll be scheduled to go to the Valley of the Kings at this time in the day, and our guides will go, oh, no, there's too many people there now, so we're going to go a little bit later. So we'll do another spiritual practice here. And those stones in those pyramids and those temples carry energy and frequency. So you have a different experience every single time you step into one of those places. So I've been in the big pyramid twice for 2 hours, and because there's a lot as below as there is above, and so you can climb down into the bottom and have these spiritual practices, and then go back up, and you're in the Queen's chamber and the King's chamber, and I can't. There are moments I'm still in awe and surprised. I remember I was in the museum. That was our second day, and this last time, and there's a room where King Tut is, and people are always lined up. They want to go in there, and I thought, oh, do I want to do this again? And I was like, oh well, I'll stand in line and I'll go in, and I go in, and I walk. And the moment I walk in, I have this feeling, and as I'm walking around, I feel like some energy is like bathing me, and it's not what I experienced the last time, to the point that I want to sit down and cry. And I walk out of the room, and it won't leave. It hasn't left me. And so eventually I kind of go, and I go through the gift shop, and I sit outside, and I say to Crocodile, who is the esoteric teacher, I explained this to them, and he said, every time you come, they recognize you more.
Oh, wow.
I was like, okay.
Wow. Yeah. So I remember reading in your book, and you mentioning that there's sort of a lineage of seers in your family, that many of the women have had dreams, and so how does being in a container like that, where you're being recognized by the ancestors or whoever is in that space, and you're feeling this rush of physical sensations, emotional sensations, how does this kind of support you on these deeper insights, or your own intuition, or your ability to see? Like, is it like you go and plug in and you're like supercharged because of this experience?
Well, there's 5 generations of women who are prophetic dreamers, and I have that gift too. I just don't talk about it a lot because it scares people if I tell them things. I learned that when I was pretty young. But here's the thing. I may be the designated guide for the journey, but I'm also a participant. And so I open myself. In fact, my prayers and my intentionality before I go on any of these, it's like, use me to guide and support the others, but also open me to receive what's there for me. And there's always something. I mean, I've got journals full of stuff, and and what I have realized is, on a very subtle level, it has grounded me in a very different way so that I can express what I believe without judgment of others, or because I can just talk about it from my own experience and be a transmitter. And I really think that that's why we're on the planet, is to radiate energy and love and to transmit it. And so sometimes it's spoken and sometimes it's just, can I bring my frequency to the space?
Yeah, it's being on a spiritual path, being so tuned in, having such a rich prayer and meditation practice, and also having to go out in the world and, do your things, do your laundry and all of, the sort of the mundane tasks of life. What I'm hearing is that this deepening that you experience on the various different sacred pilgrimages sort of give you more of an embodied spiritual presence in your life, like, because we can get sort of caught up in the phenomena, of the mystical and the magical world of our imaginations and our dreams and our visions. But it sounds like when you go, and not just there, but probably in just your everyday spiritual practice, that through the years you're gaining more of insight on how to simply be the embodied presence of all that you're learning through these, openings or awakenings, or and so how has that impacted you in your life there on your ranch with your husband? How does all of this impact your life when it's just you, when you're not a teacher or a facilitator, let's say, when you're just being with yourself?
I think the greatest gift I've been given is to be present, to really not take anything for granted, including the fact that being in this body is a gift. And so I feel like being present, what am I doing in this moment? I'm talking to Allie. What am I doing in this moment? I'm petting my dog. What am I doing in this moment? I'm communing with the trees. I mean, it's like becoming present. My TED talk was, the past does not define us. So the more I can and stay out of the past, and the less I can be forecasting into the future, then I get to enjoy this moment. And I really think that being present, Mary Magdalene talked about anthropos, and anthropos is being fully human, being fully human and fully present in every moment. And I think that's a part of the gift of these journeys that I take, and the ministry and the working with people, is that I get to be present.
Well, and I know that sense of grounded presence is probably what attracts and magnetizes to you the people that you work with. Yeah. So before we wrap up, I know that you mentioned that you have that you've got a series of meditations for supporting people with the elections coming up. And then you also have a workshop, which I'd love for you to share with people so they can get a little bit of a little bit more close with you and the work that you do.
Yeah. So the meditations, I put out on social media, what meditations would support you navigating this time. And I picked the top 8 and I created them. And if you go on cynthiajames.net to events, you'll actually, you're going to see it. You're going to see it there, and it's going to be on the slider, but they're putting it up today. And they're free. You can just download them and listen to all 8 at different times. Because I feel like the more centered we are, the clearer we are when we vote. And my grandmother told me once, a long time ago, that people died for me to be able to vote. People walked hundreds of miles for me to be able to vote, that do not take that for granted and understand it's a privilege. And so I'm inviting people to vote, and vote from their hearts. the class I was talking to you about is for women. It's called Okay, Ladies, Let's Write a Book. I think it's time for women to bring their voices to the planet. So if you go into events on cynthiajames.net, you'll see it there. I'm going to do a free webinar on October 29th, and then the class will start in November. And what it is, it's like, I'm going to help you learn how to do a proposal for a book. I'm going to help you learn how to outline a book if you want. I'm going to help you learn how to do blogs if you want, how to do an ebook. And so you get to come in, and I'm going to give you get to tap into your inner self to go, this is what I want to do now. And there's an entire manual on what it takes to be an authentic writer. And so I want to help women, tap in so that when they walk out, they've either got their ebook or their blog or their proposal or their outline for their book, so that they can move ahead. You're not going to, if you're doing a book, you're not going to finish the book in 6 weeks. But you are going to know where you're going and how you want to get there and what's your authentic voice.
Sounds amazing. Well, Cynthia, this conversation has been so heartwarming and so inspiring. Thank you so much for the work that you do in the world, for the support that you offer all of your clients, especially the women. And thank you for creating these meditations. I'm sure that there's many of us that will benefit from having that support through this period before the election. So thank you for being on the show. And I look forward to connecting with you in the future. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Thank you to New Thought Media Network for producing this show. And thank you to Satya for being our sponsor. Peace and blessings to you wherever you are. Mwah. Lots of love. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge.